Thank you, HPMF, for the 5 questions that you sent me for us to share our experiences. I think the answer lies quite simply in the fact that in India, we always know what to do with the little that we have. So, no waste should be allowed in a country like India. India has many ruins strewn all over the countryside, and they bring nothing to India. They don't bring employment, they don't bring tourism, they don't bring the revival of a whole area. So this idea actually began when I saw the ruin of Nimrana for the first time. People are busy breaking things also, demolishing old buildings, and there are also people who are busy taking them on and making something out of that. We want it to be that positive energy. In India, if you travel, you see how people in the villages particularly use waste. Many years ago in Barmer, I saw at the roadside shop of a cobbler that he was repairing a plastic bucket with a patch of leather, which is something so incredible. This was 30 years ago, and to repair a plastic bucket which couldn't be thrown away just because it had a hole or it had cracked at the bottom, by putting a patch of leather at the bottom, shows the idea of how we can recycle things. So recycling ruins for the use that they bring to tourism is a great idea, especially since our past is something which is glorious, and if we can make something out of our past, it's something that the whole world doesn't have. So they themselves can also then come to see India for a reason which was not one of the reasons for them to come to India. Our present is our future, and therefore if we are able to embellish our present, use it to advantage so that the future will also be able to use this time not wasted in the present as something concrete and usable. When we were recycling our waste, we were very conscious of the fact that there was very little waste. So when the rivers carried whatever they did, silt, even waste, sewage into the sea, it was possible for the sea to deal with it. But today, the scale of cities that we have, let's say 16 million people in Delhi, throwing their sewage into the river, which mingles with the Jamuna, and the sea cannot deal with it. The banks of the rivers cannot deal with this. So we have to find ways by which this can be avoided, using and cycling the waste of the past, that which can be, and not creating waste in the present. I think that everyone shouldn't do everything. People who are involved with heritage tourism should continue doing that, and the people who are involved with village to rural tourism, ecotourism, because that is their strength, they should continue to do that. I think that we should not pitch tourism as palace versus mud hut or countryside versus fort. I think both the ends are very important, and it depends where you're coming from. If you look at the very rich people who come to India, they're not always looking for more luxury. Sometimes they're looking for less. They're looking for an ashram. They're looking for the simplicity that India has to offer. So I think that we should keep all the options of tourism and give a twist, because tourism, Proust, the French writer, said that the real value of discovery is not to see new countrysides every day, but to have new eyes. So in the same travel that people do in India, whether they are foreigners or Indians, we should open new eyes and see what we are able to see which we were not seeing before. I can give you an example. We were sitting at Tijara Fort, which is one of the Nirvana hotels, and there were insects in the air because that's the time when they harvest the crop. We put on the lights to light up the Hawa Mahal, and insects started to collect on the halogen lights and spin around. I just pointed out to a guest who was sitting there how fascinating it was to see the dance of the insects on the light, or what we call parwana in ghazals and poetry. Insects who come and circle the candle and then die because they're attracted to that. And it was fascinating to see how more and more people gathered, and for half an hour they just watched the dance of the insects on the uplighters. Or once, when Anjali Menon was there, we had restored 2 parts of the fort palace, and a distant part was still left, which was still inhabited by a lot of bats. So in the evening, after the sunset, the bats would start to fly out, and fly out in millions. But if you just looked at it like poetry and saw the way they flew out of that ruin, it was an exceptional experience. And you could it was like a theatre being enacted by nature for you, and that's what you got out of it. So I think that we have to see in India, especially when we travel, all the luxuries, all the sights, but also the simple things, the simple joys of people. Because once they touch our heart, that is the memory that we really carry within us when we travel. The third question relates to restaurants and how they will be revived after this coronavirus menace is over. I think that when people will walk into restaurants now, they'll expect some visible difference. I think that the moment of excess has passed. I personally would not like to see a buffet which has too much of everything. I think we have to tone down, we have to simplify, we have to localize, and we also have to play the vegetarian card much more. I read once that we eat only 6% of the edible vegetables that are available on the planet Earth, which includes leaves, roots, fruits, vegetables. 6% is a very, very low percentage. I think that we should be doing more research on that before we jump into the sea and try and empty it, and into the rivers and try and empty it, and create an ecological upset. I think also that if everybody goes back to being exactly who they were and what they were doing, then we haven't learned anything. We have to do some corrective action very seriously, in the sense that we must learn to appreciate other people's viewpoint. I'll tell you a little story. We had a driver at Neem Rana who would come to Delhi, and when he was offered tea at my house, he would never have tea. We are non-vegetarians. And I would say sometimes at a mealtime, you must be hungry, perhaps you can eat something, and he would say no. And one day when I asked him what the reason was, he said that I cannot eat or drink from a kitchen where non-vegetarian food is cooked. It was a very simple explanation. But everybody used to laugh at him. So one day, in order to explain his point of view to the other people, I said to them that suppose you went to a place where they were cooking humans inside the kitchen. Would you drink tea from that kitchen? And everybody was saying, oh, not at all, it's very shocking. But today, when we hear about bats and snakes in China, or dogs and cats, we are shocked. But where is the difference when we apply it to the things, the animals that we are able to eat here and eat with comfort as if we were doing nothing wrong? I think a rethinking on this has to be followed so that there is a visible difference. If people begin to appreciate each other's points in eating. Let's learn from the Jains, because in India we have every kind of learning from different communities. Therefore, I think we'll be a wiser nation if we keep the learning process active and forget some of the habits which we now know are not right. I think it's a very good suggestion that we should have, on the style of the Palace on Wheels, trains which can take people to see India, but at a cost which is affordable for all Indians. I think it's a brilliant idea. And since we have so many railway stations, I think it would be possible to do circuits in which the trains would be able to stop at different stations. So wherever they stop, that area would develop. But it's more easily said than done, because when you stop in a village and people get off to go to the village, to see the village, to eat over there have to be kitchens which can cook hygienic food, or houses who are trained to understand how food should be cooked in quantities, or there should be toilets, particularly for the ladies, and all these things we need, but necessity is the mother of invention. So when the demand for this increases, it's bound to develop. And since we are not going to start traveling immediately to far off places to increase our carbon footprint, it would be a great idea if the railways get together and plan this internal discovery for Indians, so that our confidence develops, our economies develop. And when people say that some architects contacted me and said after this coronavirus there's going to be no work in the cities. So perhaps it is a time for the younger architects perhaps, to move to villages and to carry good practice there. If we've made a mess of our cities, we cannot now learn nothing from this. We can't arrive in a village and carry the same mess that we created in the city and start to create it over there. So we start with the whole thing about sewage disposal, how to get rid of plastics, so that the young architects can train villagers to do this, and that will rejuvenate the economy from the rural level. And rather than always waiting for the trickle to come from the top to bottom, there'll perhaps be a capillary action from the village to the city, so that there is growth with this new learning. What we are currently going through is something that has never happened in the history of mankind ever before. And India, which is the only continuously alive civilization in the whole world, has a racial memory of continuity like no other civilization in the world. Therefore, I believe that India has to be a wiser nation, a nation that changes the parameters. The joys of traveling and tourism should not just be, let's run to Iceland, let us run to the other corner of the world, the North Pole, increasing the carbon footprint of everybody on the planet. The joys that we find in travel within our country, and the Prime Minister has been saying this long before this happened, have many other advantages besides developing our economy, besides getting to know our people. It has the advantage also of not increasing the carbon footprint. Very close to Delhi, there are so many places you can do. Close to all the cities in India, there is discovery, there is learning, there is adventure. I think that we should all get into that. And having been from complete simplicity to excess, for which we are paying today, we should learn our lessons. There is a wonderful saying, destiny has two ways to ruin you, either by giving you what you want or by denying it to you. So if we deny something to ourselves willfully, then we will not resent it, and we will begin to enjoy much more that which we get. So I think it is a time to be wise today, so that 10 years from now we are happier and traveling and discovering the country and the world in a very different perspective. Thank you.